about 2 months ago. So we didn't actually get these records that they copied for us until a year or two ago. In the meanwhile, one of the categories of records we wanted were the reefs-to-reefs records that showed how they were building all these reefs, and they were going through a private nonprofit to do this, and the nonprofit was signing all the invoices and so forth. And so I went to the nonprofit, and they willingly released these records for me to review. So we got that set of records from the nonprofit, and I still have them that DMR would let us have. So we were able to go ahead and write about that. The point being that I know there are a lot of veterans in this room that it's so much easier to go to someone who will give you records than it is to file a request for it. Get them from someone who will let you have them. That's the way to go. I don't like to have to file records requests.
Let me get to the cast of characters here. Paul, if you'd address this, Paul Wright's opinion, we were talking a little bit about maybe the motivations. You had the Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney. Tell us about some of the characters involved and what you thought might have been going on in those sense.
I think the first thing that we kind of looked at is that we had a ton of records before we made these requests. That's how I ended up getting involved. I was downsizing. I ended up working part-time as an editorial writer. And I'd written an editorial about a story that Karen had written. And I was giving it to her to check for facts, make sure it's actually correct. And I know Karen fairly well, because obviously something was wrong with her. And so I asked her what was going on. She said, well, I'm getting all this information from DMR, and it's overwhelming. And so I asked her if I could help her just try to organize it. And that's kind of how I got in this. And it ended up being that we knew what some things from that was going on, and we'd write about it, and then the investigators would investigate. So we were basically helping them along, and yet we were getting all this resistance from them. It didn't make any sense, and we still don't know. Nobody knows their motivation of them, and they're not talking. But it was odd that we have Assistant Attorney Generals assigned to the Department of Marine Resources that are there to make sure the Department of Marine Resources are following the laws and everything they do, and they're advising them not to follow the law. They're telling them not to follow the open records law. It just got stranger and stranger into where they're actually in cahoots with each other to keep the records from coming to light. When we've got, we have more records than we've requested. We had the audit reports from the Office of the Inspector General that basically laid out the case against the lockers. And those folks came in and audited what was called the Coastal Assistance Impact Program, which is money from oil companies to mitigate damage they do when they drill for oil out in the Gulf. Well, it was being used to buy each other's houses. Family members were buying other family members' houses at what seemed to be inflated prices. And that was the gist of the case. So we knew all that, and we were asking for a little piece of that, which was how was Director Walker spending this money that came.
It was Katrina relief money to pay employees, to help pay employees' salaries and overtime after the storm.
And we heard that there was a separate tax that was in his possession, and that the auditor actually came and got it and taken it away. So that's what we knew. We knew that something was going on at DMR. We had a general idea based on records that were given us, obviously by somebody from DMR, because they came out of DMR.
They were slipped in the mail, right?
Yeah.
Some
came in the mail from Texas. Some was delivered at our front desk. A person just dropped them off and left real quick. And so we had to figure out a way to authenticate it. And originally what we did was work on stories, figure out things that were going on, and then call the people involved and say, well, you're aware of this audit report. And one person I asked blurted out, well, that's a preliminary report. So that basically confirmed that, what we had was genuine. And, from there, it's pretty easy to,
But there's, well, I guess the question is, y'all kind of like the dead bodies that connect this corrupt guy in the Department of Marine Resources with the federal attorney and the state auditor. Usually you think the state auditor would be going after that person. I mean,
and he
I've
did
seen anything that live or so complicit with it, that's the weird part.
Everyone thinks there's some sort of smoking gun, and maybe there is, but we haven't found anything to suggest that it's not contained in DMR, I don't believe.
Let me make another really important point here. DMR, by Public Records Act and another act, has a responsibility to maintain integrity of records, of public records. What it did was, from the auditor, it gave the DMR the option of either furnishing copies of originals. It loaded up to 60 boxes of records, originals, and just wholesale turned them over to the auditor. And therefore, the said agency had none of his records. So how does anybody ever find out what were the records? The agency doesn't keep this on.
That was an important point in her ruling. I thought that she said you were responsible for copying
Right.
and maintaining them and turning them over. So it was pretty bad.
And just for the record, let me state the person in the U.S. Attorney's Office who was doing all this was John Dowdy, who heads the Criminal Investigations Division. He was very much in charge over there of all this. I don't know that Greg Davis had much involvement in it at all, except to sign off on what John wanted to do here. He's the one that had the records subpoenaed to Jackson, and the judge noted that the grand jury could not have needed the records because the very day they were subpoenaed to Jackson, the indictments came out. So they didn't review these records. There was no indication of that.
There was a very good editorial directed at the U.S. Attorney General, basically telling, do you know what's going on in Mississippi? Your guys do it. Mr. Ray, before we get too far away from get it down to the reason all these stories are written, but the citizens following this and how important public records is to accountability and citizen accountability.
I'm a much better writer than a speaker, so you all will have to bear with me. Most of you do not live in $1 million homes like it appears that the people involved with the DMR do. If you have the time, just go down to East Beach. This summer, we got word that they were having a protest on the beach due to the fact that they were having a fundraiser for Stacy Pickering, who is the auditor, and it was being held by Joe Cloud. And Joe Cloud at the time, and whether he is there now, I don't know, was employed as a contract laborer with for DMR. And of course, in my opinion, he's a shady character. But anyway, it appears he's a shady character. So I went down with the rest of us old people, but they had a few young ones down there. And I brought my American flag, and we were well covered with the Sun Herald and the WLOX. All the politicians, 95% of them went through the back door. If you all are familiar with Ocean Springs, your beach is here, you have a little street that goes up. Well, they all went in through that back street so that the public didn't see where they were visiting. I saw Jackson County people, Zuber, the whole 9 yards. I appreciate, and we appreciate the Sun Herald for forcing DMR to turn over the records on the Freedom of Information Act, because we, as just an everyday citizen, we don't have the money to fight City Hall. So we appreciate that. I have attended a number of DMR meetings, and it is a joke. You all ought to find the time or send someone to go listen. DMR's head honcho was a peon before, and guy that he was picked by Governor Bryant, and whom else I don't know. And he sits up there and tells you one thing, and then they do something else. It appears they're not for the ecology and to restore the Mississippi Gulf Coast and keep it in pristine condition as they should. They will listen to the scientists that they've hired, and of course, Miller and all these high dollars that has come in since Walker have gone through secretive employment. In other words, we don't know who they interviewed. They could have interviewed Al Capone and Pretty Boy Floyd for all we know, because it's all secret. I've talked to Senator Wiggins, which is from Pascagoula, and he did call me personally, but I believe him about like I would believe my dog talking to her. I'm sorry, I'm just telling you how I feel. He's telling me how wonderful Miller is. It is terrible that an agency does not have enough sense, common sense, that they will hire a convicted sex offender to be on their staff at high dollar jobs. And that's another thing that sticks in my craw. He or she is one of the people that Governor Moore pardoned. But it's on the internet for anybody to read. Yet that is the way they conduct their business.
So are you suggesting that the situation has not improved despite all of this exposure?
That's a bunch of hogwash.
Which is a bunch of hogwash.
That it has improved.
Would they press the panel? Do you agree with that? That the situation is no better despite all of your efforts to expose the corruption and the previous administration?
Well, I can give you that. I don't know how much better it is. It is a little better. I can give you one example. They have an accounting firm named Horns. That's basically they're paying $1 million to try to get these accounts, find out what's in what accounts, and get them straightened out to the point that we can get an annual audit. Which is one of the things we had a forum about the need. You know, if you have an annual audit by an outside firm, these things can't happen. So we got an anonymous tip that Horn's contract had been inflated again, and so we went and did a request, and they didn't. To their credit, they handed over what we requested, which somebody had already given us, but this helps prove that what's what. The next time they added more to the contract, they called me and said, I know someone's going to tell you about this. So we're going to add more to the Horns contract. When would you like to talk to Director Miller? Now, maybe that's just a way to mitigate the damage, but, it is, I think they have a realization that everybody, Maxine, other people that comment on our website and on other websites, not just the newspapers are watching them, other people are watching them. I think they're aware of that, and whether the minute we turn our back, it goes back to business as usual. We don't know. But, our plan is not to let them do that, because that's why that's why I'm here. Is when I look out there and see the sound of the water and the trickle, that's why I'm here. I don't want that to get messed up. And DMR is our assurance that that's not going to happen. And if they're doing the job, it won't happen. If they're not, that people can run riot out there and mess it up. I don't want that. That's my motivation for a lot of this is, to keep South Mississippi looking the way it did when I came down here in 1989 and said, wow, this is not the Mississippi I thought it would be.
I would say that the blatant spending is not going on now. The political favoritism hasn't changed. Jamie Miller is now the DMR director that Maxine is talking about. That might not have changed, and that's not necessarily illegal, but I don't think that the kind of spending that we're doing is going on. For example, Bill Walker's private foundation, and at least he's based in DMR, also received a check that was intended for the agency. Under the Rigs to Rigs program, the oil company donates a rig, and then they give they're giving the DMR money to maintain that rig. In one case, and these records came to us anonymously, we never would see these records. Walter Oil and Gas Company sent their rigs to rigs donation to Bill Walker's private foundation. And when he was sentenced in federal court Monday for conspiracy to defraud the government, that Walter Oil and Gas check was part of the amount illegally appropriated by his foundation, and the total amount that foundation took from DMR was $444,000. That was a private foundation, so we have never been able to examine their books and see what all they do with that money and where they got all of it.
Let's get back to Henry on some of the legal aspects that you were dealing with. And also the judge actually had to figure out what they were doing to try to subvert everything she was doing.
Another point that's important is that it's over 25,000 pages of documents that got issued after the suit was filed. And there's 60 boxes left in custody of DMR for the auditor's office. And in this decision by Judge Sloan on May 27th, she found that DMR had an obligation not just to consider victims that go together, and found that was a violation of the representative point. Then we get to the auditor, get our things better. I think DMR, once the suit was filed, did a good job of trying to get the record to us, but the records were already gone. 60 boxes were gone, and they did nothing to get them back. The auditor, meanwhile, has custody of these records and fought us tooth and nail. And it's got to come out here. One night, I get a call from Judge Sloan at home, and she had the Assistant Attorney General, Jackson. She is called saying, Judge, you just ordered that we bring these records to you and leave them there. We got a federal subpoena today. This is after 5 o'clock tonight. And we were being required to bring these records to the federal grand jury in Jackson tomorrow. The records were in Biloxi. They show up after the attorney, the judge's assistant calls the judge calls me on a conference call. The records aren't going to Jackson. She said, keep them here. Move for protective order. If you have to do more morning, Jackson, we'll copy the records. They violated that. So are things better? They're going to be better because the auditor's been found in civil contempt. Doing it.
That's a good point, and I guess a good way to jump into question and answer on this, but dealing with the story, dealing with something like this from your paper or your organization, what are some of the main points of how you pursue this? I think one of the main things was that the judge paid attorney's fees in this. That was a significant sanction. The $100 fine didn't mean much or won't mean much, but having to force them to pay attorney's fees for disregarding this was
Who actually paid it, individuals or their agencies?
Agencies and the attorneys right now. The Sun Herald did not ask for relief by way of paying attorney's fees under either the Litigation Accountability Act, which is bringing a frivolous claim or making a frivolous defense, or the Public Records Act that allows for attorney's fees in certain cases. But all we asked for was attorney's fees against the agencies, and the judge gave us that. And then she found that the attorneys that we didn't ask for were also responsible for the attorney's fees. And I think that's an important point. Attorney's fees might hinder sort of repetitious conduct in the future. I don't know.
When you say the attorneys, who's attorneys?
My firm was awarded $36,000 in attorney's fees. I know it sounds like a lot, but let me tell you,
To be paid like
by the auditor and by the DMR and by the attorneys for those agencies. And I could spend.
when you say the attorneys for those agencies, private attorneys or
No, the state employees.
now their own money?
Yes. No. Well, yes. Yes, they're responsible personally, jointly and severally with the two state agencies.
how they work out, who pays what.
Well, but this decision's not even 30 days old, they've moved to alter that part of the judgment, so we don't know what's going to happen.
And another important thing is the judge actually said, in very strong language, it's worth going back and reading her ruling, it's very good, but she actually said they intentionally did this and went through how they went about trying to hide this, and she fined them the maximum under the public records law of $100.
Yeah, I think the key deterrent
Personally.
the key deterrent is for them individually to have to pay.
Remember that a couple of years ago, that part of the Public Records Act allowed attorney's fees in a proper case required the denial by the state agency to be, quote, willfully and knowingly. Now that's been legislated out of existence. It's just a wrong decision. So if you do pursue public records and you succeed, you'll have to prove that they were willfully and wrongfully withheld.
Although they were in this case.
Very much so.
I think all of us probably will run into some kind of routinely, record issues. Based on what all of you have gone through this experience, in general terms, what did you learn about open records that will help you in future cases? They're not all on the big scale on this. Is there anything that you took away in terms of what have you learned from this live? Perhaps we just too late.
It just reinforces for me that it's best to try to get these records through some avenue other having them file an official request and get the agency or board or whatever you're dealing with on the
I really am naive to believe that most representatives of local, state government subject to public records actually simply try to do the right thing, try to do their job, try to comply. Sometimes they ignorantly break, violate the Public Records Act, but usually not knowingly. Usually. I've seen some awfully creative ways to circumvent the Public Records Act and Open Meetings Act. But the one year may take the cake because of disobeying the judge's orders to make the records available. So, what I take away from it, remember, the Assistant U.S. Attorney said, according to under oath testimony from the auditor's chief right-hand man, that he had a conversation when he was being subpoenaed for these records by the U.S. Attorney's judge, and said he didn't want them for the criminal investigation. He just didn't want them to go public. Now, what I take away from this is, not to be diplomatic, it raises my level of concern about why these records were withheld. If they're not being used in a criminal investigation, why were they even there? And another interesting point is the indictments came down the day these records were delivered. They were not necessary for the indictments. Now, there may be other indictments coming down, but these records were subpoenaed and were delivered the morning the indictments came down from the federal grand jury. They were not. The federal government, by the way, had access to them for about a year, and then mysteriously found the need to subpoena them. There's not any doubt in my mind. I'm morally certain these records were whisked away by the auditor and by the U.S. Attorney's Office to keep them from the public. And that goes back to the question, why? I don't know.
The funny side note is they had them in a U-Haul. They had brought them over. Jennifer Schlegel, the judge, was having a hearing in Bay St. Louis, and they brought them over, and Henry and I were there, and they brought them over in a U-Haul, and they were supposed to take them. She trusted them to take these records back to Biloxi in this U-Haul and keep them there over the weekend, and we were supposed to get to copy them and so forth. And the investigator who took them up to Jackson, they were in touch with the U.S. Attorney's Office this whole time, and whisked them away in the night. He took the U-Haul up to Jackson and then sat in a motel parking lot all night while he waited to deliver them to the grand jury the next morning. I always thought that was funny.
And I need to tell you that the Assistant Attorney General of Mississippi who was going in front of the judge the night that the records were taken up to Jackson to comply with federal grand jury subpoena. Didn't know they were on the road, Illinois. She didn't know until the next morning. And that's under oath testimony. They didn't tell their own attorney. They were taking these records from Biloxi to the U.S. attorney, to the grand jury in Jackson. Didn't tell their own attorney.
I think Anita raised this in one of her stories. You think you got the records? You think there were some that were hidden away that you still don't have access to, that were in all this subterfuge were lost in one?
No, I don't. And Henry would have, I would like to hear what Henry has to say about that too.
I'm not going to speculate. I have suspicion, but I have nothing. I cannot tell you that I know we didn't get the records. I know that there's a great deal of concern by some investigators about whether the investigation was aggressive enough. And there were those who investigated who felt it was not being aggressively investigated. When I hear that, and I hear we can't have access to records, I don't know why we didn't do it, but I can say I don't have any evidence. As a lawyer, I don't have any evidence that we didn't get all the records. I suspect we did not, but I can't tell you I didn't.
And just think what the effect of all this, just, hiding the records and keeping them from, in the public's mind, all that says is there's something in those boxes that they don't want you to see. I mean, that's the kind of the theme here, is that if they were trying to cover up something, this is a pretty dumb way to do it, because it just increased every step of the way, more people will start paying attention.
Imagine 60 banquet boxes and then some in a room. The judge changed the courtroom locks so that nobody could go without her key. All these records were brought back from the U.S. Attorney's Office and grand jury. But these records dealt with things like entertaining politicians, campaign contributions. I mean, these sorts of things, motel rooms, parties. How many? I mean, it wouldn't take just a few documents being lifted here or there, and then you wouldn't get the interesting things. I know of situations, not maybe somewhere, some of this money, some of these things, some of this entertainment we have found documents, was there a receipt somewhere? No. And all the entertainment wasn't just Mississippi.
In Louisiana, and I follow this from afar, be associated with some of these people on the panel. We got to say, when you're stretching near payday, ain't no chicken in this gumbo. We didn't have any chicken in the gumbo. It's still out there clucking somewhere. That's just the way it is. They're hiding something just as sure as I'm sitting here.
Well, it's interesting that the FBI, I was in court Monday for Bill Walker's sentencing. It was interesting that the FBI's forensic accountant, who was extremely impressive and got on the stand, found $1.8 billion in misspending on Walker's behalf, by Walker. And state auditor Stacey Coopering's demand for repayment of funds was only to Walker was only around $362,000.
Do the math. How the federal calculators be so much different from the state?
The fellow that bought one of these boats, the lesser of the two boats that all this $1.8 million was spent on, called me a couple of weeks ago and said, he's a guy from Biloxi, and said, guess how many hours I spent on my boat out in the water? Well, I don't know. None. Well, why not? He goes, I'm having to put thousands of dollars in it just to get it seaworthy. So, I mean, it's time to have a look at the boat. And if they spent half of that money on that boat, they got robbed because there's nothing on it.
I guess, the thing I would ask, when you're dealing with that many records, it can be pretty complicated. You're not getting all the records that you want, so there's initial context. You understand this record without having the record you haven't gotten yet. And you need somebody to forensic accountant. Did you guys feel confident that you knew what you were looking at, you could evaluate what you had? And how difficult was that to understand the story, understand the documents?
tips from sources we have on the story. We knew some specific things that we needed to look for in the records, but I don't know about Paul, because he spent a lot of time looking there too, and I'd like to hear what he has to say about it, but I felt like I could have been missing something because I just didn't have information about some aspect of what happened to be on the lookout for specific records, but we knew some of the files that were organized by vendor once we got them. We knew some of the files we needed to look at and examine those closely, but there were so many bankers boxes. We did wonder, I wondered, what am I missing here that I don't know to be looking for?
Yeah, a general question maybe to the news editor. How much of this story do you report to your readers, and what are your risks, and where do you watch out for what to report and what not to report?
I can't think of much that we held back that we found. Of course, as I mentioned, it went through a very heavy vetting process. First, I'd read the story, then our executive editor would read the story, then other team members would read the story, and then eventually, we get to lawyers like Henry or Steve Burns, a company attorney.
What were you afraid of would happen? What were you afraid that? What mistake were you afraid with all that checking? What were you concerned about?
That we would say something that would get us in trouble, that would land us in court. These people were, many of the people we were dealing with were not happy that we were writing about them. I think it's a general concern of any city.
Well, we hadn't written very many stories, and we got a letter from a big law firm in Jackson, basically saying that we were spreading lies about their client. They didn't like it, so there was public attempts to try to scare us into not writing anything.
The letter was from a law firm in Jackson, Washington, D.C., concerning their client, his client, who was the director of DMR, Mr. Walker. And he pleaded guilty this week. We got two letters saying we're defaming him.
They never followed up with a lawsuit.
I have a question. Do you know if there's any ongoing criminal investigations into Michelle Hill's death? Michelle Hill's death. She was the secretary for Bill Walker. And do you know if there's any other criminal investigations of other deaths that have happened while this is involved?
I don't believe this is going any further. And in fact, in court the other day, when Walker was sentenced to 5 years, which is the max he could get on this conspiracy charge, it came out that Michelle Hill's suicide was mentioned in the pre-sentence report, and the judge and the court concluded that there was no evidence to show that his actions caused this suicide. His attorney, Bill Kirksey, was arguing that. He was trying to get a sentence reduction, and they were going through the pre-sentence report for that reason. And Kirksey said there was this shouldn't have been mentioned in the report because there was nothing to link the death to Bill Walker, and the judge agreed with that. I don't see this going any further. I haven't heard any indications that it is. In fact, I've heard it's pretty much over now. Whether it might go into another direction because Bill Walker had a son, Scott Walker, who's about to be sentenced, and Scott is cooperating with the government, and Scott moved in a lot of circles. He's a consultant, whatever. And so what he's talking about.
And there are 2 people that haven't pleaded guilty, so there could be 2 trials. Who knows what might come out there? But, that we don't know. We don't know anything about those cases really. There's much in the indictment.
Back to the question, did we get all the records or was some of them removed? In the interest of fairness and balance, the auditor's chief investigator gave an affidavit that he knew of no alteration to the records. He didn't have any reason to believe that anything had been compromised. I don't suspect anybody who was an attorney in this case or an elected official in this case that having tampered with the records or removed records. saying about anybody else who had access, and we'll never know. Because these records were taken away from a state agency, and although they were used in a criminal investigation, 12 months is a long time for them to be away from what it's supposed to be. So I don't believe anybody involved in this case, who was testified or investigated, took the records away.
And then when we got them, it's 3 or 4 people looking through a mountain of records, as fast as we can, because we sort of had a limited time. We thought, we want to try the judge's patience. She's been very helpful, so we're going, as fast as we can. Like I said, we're not forensics accountants or anything like that, so we're looking for things that just seem odd, basically. And so, some things we knew to look for, but there's a possibility that we didn't see everything. We did our best.
Another interesting footnote to me about this whole affair is we need to congratulate Sun Herald's editorial staff and reporters for doing an excellent job in describing these records. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. Almost verbatim, the wording they use to make public records requests is lifted from public records requests on the state auditor's subpoena. That in turn is lifted from the state auditor's subpoena and put on the U.S. Federal Grand Jury subpoena. So they've done it right. They describe the record really well, as evidenced by the fact that everybody in the government who warned them used the same wording.
Some of the lessons learned, again, I followed this from afar and just been fascinated by all of it. But one, to reaffirm the importance of the commitment of the Sun Herald to do this, to put their people and their money on the line, and to risk being sued, to spend the money on the attorney's fees without any expectation that it would be returned, and to devote the staff. And having been a city editor, I know how difficult it is to manage something like that when you have a lot of other things to do too. So that's one of the things that stands out to me is the commitment of Sun Herald to do this. Also, if you remember, all of us who have dealt with open records and open meetings issues in the public, how each of these officials involved in this have always strongly said how they were for open government. The state auditor, the attorney general, everybody. I could tell on this story are on record talking about how they're for open government, and when it came down to it, they actually worked against that in every instance they could. And still, again, I don't know why. I don't know the motivations of how that would harm prosecution or whatever. But and also something that stands out to me was the importance of having judges, elected judges, who understand the importance of open government and held their feet to the fire. And from what it appears, I don't know the judge in this case, but she really went out of her way to carry this course to the end of the course and to do the right thing. Just to read from her opinion, the events that took place raised serious questions of contempt, ethics, professionalism, and duty of candor to the court, misconduct, bad faith, and abuse of the grand jury process. That's pretty strong words from the chancellor to statewide elected officials and the attorney general and the U.S. Attorney's Office. So,
she also wrote at one point that she ponders with astonishment at the events she was seeing.
It also says that it might be criminal while doing involved in that side.
So sticking to it, being able to put the people and the treasurer on the line to do this, and it gets to the point of serving the public and allowing the public, Ms. Ramsey, and the people who can make the political changes that might affect some of the conduct in this. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
There's another thing. The Sun Herald gave the honor on the front page, Mississippi named most appropriate state in the USA. Our local people that are supposed to be supporting us took a number of boat trips out to wherever on the DMR boats. They were treated like royalty, but not the first one has come in and say, I owe you $50 for my part on this trip. But if you or I, and I did ask, I wanted a free boat trip for my grandchildren, and they refused. They didn't do that no more.
You ruined it for everybody.
I think it's kind of ironic. They even had, I'm sure there's more, but they even had a Madison County tax assessor that got a free trip, and I'm sure he was learning about the saltwater fishing. And the former CMR appointee by Barbara Bright, Jimmy Taylor, he used the foundation boats. When his was broke down, he's a charter boat captain, but we never read where he paid for his fuel, food, beverages, and whatever. Jackson County Supervisor and Jackson McKay, Miller, I forgot what his title is in Jackson County, another Miller. And they have pictures to prove it. And they took their grandchildren, or McKay did, on the birthday jaunt. But they were out showing them about the shrimp and the crabs and the fish, if you want to go in that. So that's why the public is so up in arms. If they can do it, why can't we on the taxpayer dollars?
Sounds like a good editorial. Why don't we agree based on this? Again, thank you all the panelists and
I have one question if you will before we leave. I'm curious, now I wasn't in here the whole time, so I don't know what was really discussed, but I'm curious. Does the FBI subscribe to the Sun Herald? And since they have an FBI agent in Gulfport, I guess they don't have to. So I'd like to ask a question. How many people in here, their newspaper is, the FBI has a subscription to their newspaper? No one?
I don't know I don't deal with circulation, so I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that yes, indeed, the FBI reads the Sun Herald, and Paul pointed out that we would report things, and they would go out and the auditor and FBI and investigate it. But the FBI has always been, they've always been religious clippings of newspaper articles.
Well, I know the FBI subscribes to our page.
I'm sure they
And I just wondered if
I actually had the director of the FBI in Mississippi come to the office, actually come more than once, just wondering, "Are you here?" So they did actively watch the media, and at least they did in the Jackson area. So I'm hoping they were very watchful of this and should still be. Thank you.